Welcome back after another lengthy absence. There's been a lot going on, which we've attempted to keep you up to date via email, but we'll update you. And we've got an important vote to consider tonight, so that's great. Do want to take a minute to welcome one of our two new members, Chief Nixon. Welcome to the school building committee. So glad to have you on board.
Thank you very much.
And for the chief's benefit, as well as our candidate firm for OPM from PMA, I'd like to go around the room and, if everybody, again, as you usually do, state your affiliation if you have one associated with the building committee officially. So again, I'm Gary Keith, the chair. Donna?
I'm Donna Hume. I'm a resident and the current school committee chair.
Dave Gagnon, town administrator.
Bill Flynn, former school committee resident.
David Schmier, school committee.
Art Cabral, resident and chair of the Water Commission.
Deb Yanis, director of curriculum and resident.
John Collins, director of instructional technology.
Edie White, principal of Rose Ellis Elementary Schools.
Kat Marble, director of student services.
Karen Alex, grade 3 teacher.
Rich Lehman, principal of the Howard School.
Marcy Lee, ADA coordinator.
Sarah Connolly, resident and youth athletic association. Yeah, it's a lot for the kids in sports.
Scott Weed, resident.
Michael Perez, select board.
Jim Holden, former school committee member and resident.
Mary Anderson, resident.
Chad Crittenden with PMA. I'm a managing director with PMA.
Mitch Miller, I'm a senior associate with PMA.
Tim Nixon again. As of right now, so thank you.
Mark Bottle, superintendent schools.
And next to me, our other new member, representing the Finance Committee, Cheryl Adams. Cheryl, welcome aboard. And again, I should have said this right at the beginning, we are being taped tonight for the community access broadcast after this meeting, so everybody should be aware of that. First order of business is approval of the minutes from our last formal meeting, January 23rd, that were previously posted and distributed. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Move we accept the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted, thank you. And again, I distributed one of the emails, an updated copy of the roster with Cheryl and Chief Nixon's appointment. Once we made the appointment, again, it has to go to MSBA for their affirmation, which they have responded affirmatively. So they are both officially voting members as of whatever the date was on that piece of correspondence, February 27th. So we're in good shape there. Okay, so as a little bit of background, again, between myself and Mark Bodwell, we've tried to keep you current. Those of you who didn't participate in the selection process, some of you would probably be thankful that you didn't, based on the experience of those who did. But let me just bring you up to date about what happened since the last meeting. So I guess the first event was we did a tour on February 14th after the RFS was posted for any interested firms to come out, and we had at that 20 firms. They were not only potential OPM firms, but also a couple of architectural firms came as well, because it was an opportunity for them to walk through the schools, even though obviously they wouldn't be bidding on the OPM contract. So we toured all 3 schools that day in about 2 hours roughly. And then we had the submittals were due on February 21st. We had a total of 10 submittals that the subcommittee had to review in a pretty quick turnaround between the time the package came in. We had to create a short list. We cut the list of 10 down to a short list of 4. We scheduled interviews for each of the 4 candidate firms. That was held on March 6th. And we pushed away for that meeting, as I indicated, one of the emails, with basically a tie of 2 firms. And we felt at that point we couldn't do anything more in terms of discussion to move the needle on that. We had sent out, as part of the process, a review package for references, and the MSBA process requires us to do references not only on the shortlist candidate of 4, but the entire group of 10. So we had to do them all. And So that was a little bit laborious, but it was helpful in terms of the feedback we got back. We met again on March 10th. That Monday before we were supposed to meet the last time. We got back together again and looked at the references that we had gotten back and had further discussion, and that's when we made the selection for PMA as our candidate firm. So the process is right now is we have Mark Bodwell, myself, and Dave Gagney met with PMA last week, and we have successfully agreed to contract terms. Basically, the contract itself is a standard MSBA contract. We have come to agreement on the $320,000 not to exceed figure, $320,000 that was the allocated portion of the $1.2 million that we have allocated, we have successfully received from the town for the feasibility study. And now the contract is going through our review with town council, but we shouldn't expect to see too many issues with that, hopefully. So what we do tonight is take a formal vote of the process and make our recommendation to the MSBA OPM selection panel. And that meeting will be held on May 6th. And Mark and I will participate with that. I hope that's another remote meeting, which it probably is. So we've asked PMA to come here tonight, and Chad and Mitch are here, and asked them basically to give a similar presentation to what they did for the selection subcommittee at our interview session with them. So about 15 minutes or so. Obviously, at that point, we can open it up to any questions to them, and then we'll look to go through the formal process of making the motion and having any further discussion on the merits of the motion itself. Okay, any questions at this point before we move forward? All right, I'll turn it over to Mitch.
Well, good to see some familiar faces from the selection committee, and nice to meet the rest of you here tonight. As mentioned, I'm here with Chad Crittenden, and we'll just give you an overview of the presentation we put together for you all. So our team is comprised of a core team with a support team and sub-consultants. So I'm part of the core team that you'll see. We have some missing faces here tonight. Chad's obviously here. He's part of our PMA support team. We also have Zoe, who's part of our community outreach team and marketing. And for sub-consultants that we'll carry, we'll have an estimator, and that's PMNC highlighted here that you'll see. That's Maria McKenna. We wanted to highlight some of our past experience. Projects in bold are projects that our core project team have participated together on. So as you see, there's a pretty extensive list here that we have highlighted. Some recent ones, Dennis Yarmouth Intermediate Middle School that just wrapped up, Hingham Foster that's ongoing now, Easton Blanche Ames that just wrapped up as well. During this, the whole project is a very lengthy project, from your eligibility phase all the way through completion. So we like to say we're one of the first ones in and the last ones out during the phase of the project. So right now we're only on step 2, forming the project team. So you'll get the OPM on board, which is PMA, and then we'll help through the designer selection process. Once the designer's on board, we'll move into feasibility and schematic design, and that'll fall in the schedule you'll see later on, where we'll get to the project funding part of that as well. Then we move into detailed design, so creating the construction documents and then actually getting into bidding and going out to construction. And then last but not least, we'll get into the completion and closeout phase, which is all the way at the end. But it's a pretty lengthy process, but we're here the whole time. I feel like we're looking at you the whole time.
I can see just fine.
So when we get into the project delivery, so once we come on board and start to really look at the options that we have, there's a few different selections that we can go through for the actual delivery method for the project. So there's a Chapter 149, which is a design bid build. There's no restriction on project dollar values, favors the lowest qualified bid, and there's been a proven costs with this versus Chapter 149A.
And that, just excuse me. Yep, Mitch, that was the Chapter 149 design bid build is what we did for this project here for the middle senior high school.
Yep, and then that leads us into 149A, which is CM at risk. So the construction manager come on board a little earlier than a design bid build. We find it typically best for complex projects where there's a lot of phasing of a selective demo and then additions at an existing site. We do find that, as I mentioned before, they do cost about 5 to 50% more than Chapter 149. And then there's a third option that PMA likes to use, and we call it the approach hybrid here, the approach option, which is Chapter 149 plus Chapter 30. So we can get in with an early bid package if the site needs some site work ahead of time, or if there's some utilities that have to get moved, or if we have to get in and demo a building ahead of time that's on an existing site. We can do that as an early package, and then we can go into a design bid build package at the same time. So we can kind of run these concurrently and save some time and accelerate the project by doing that. Some recent examples: Carver was design bid build, Shrewsbury Beal out in Worcester was a CM at risk, and then currently going on as Hingham Elementary School. It's a hybrid approach that we did. These are just some projects with those different delivery methods. So Chapter 149A are all on the left. Design, bid, build, you'll see a handful on the right, and then the PMA approach that I talked about, as I mentioned, Hingham, Bristol, Plymouth Tech, Wareham, Easton, and Hanover High all went through that early package, plus 149 as well. That leads us into cost-effective solutions. So this is a chart right from the MSBA, so we get this directly from them, and we highlighted some of the PMA projects and where they fall on this chart. As you can see, we're pretty cost-effective in relation to the other projects that are listed here. You can see the orange squares, and PMA is generally on the lower end of those. Even once you get to the newer projects, and which cost per square foot can get up there, we still to be on the bottom end of the range. This just goes to show some of that success. So not only before COVID, but after COVID, we're still seeing the success as well. So up at the top, we have voter-approved budget. So this would be the project funding that gets approved. And then at the bottom, we have the final costs. So you can see across the board, we have an average of about 13% savings on our projects, all the way back to 2016 to most recently to 2021. So before and after the COVID market, because sometimes that does get brought up into it, and it's escalation from after COVID, and nope, but we carry that through before as well. So we actually revised this slide for tonight because we had talked about schedule with Gary and Mark and David back there, yep. And due to the fact that our OPM date kind of got shuffled around a little bit, we wanted to go back and revise it. And this is kind of confusing when you look at it, but the more important thing is that blue is the designer selection, orange and green are part of the MSBA submittal process. So we have the preliminary design and their preferred schematic, and then red is schematic design. At the end of schematic design is when we're authorized the borrowing, so the project funding. And that brings us all the way into January of 2025. So this is what we looked at. We took a close look at it. You'll see some have parallel paths. For instance, if we submit a PDP package to the MSBA, we're still going to work on the next submittal, the PSR, at that same time and not wait for comments. PMA has an accelerated schedule approach versus our competitors. I feel like we can really have an advantage here when we look at these programs together and really tighten up the gaps here and put our best path forward.
January 26th.
26. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I misspoke.
We'd really move fast.
Yeah, that would be really fast. Speaking of schedule, so we've already started to look at some site options here. I know we're very early on, so these are just conceptual items that we put together here. So on the left, you'll see the schools in the district for the different enrollments that we have. And then on the right, you'll see the location. So we have the McDonald School as a location, Spring Street School as a location, Howard Elementary School, and an alternate site. So that's TBD. We don't really know where there would be, but we are taking a look at all the options. And this is just a handful that we ran through. Once we really dive into this, there'll be a lot of different options that we can put together. But this is a good starting point because we're going to need this as we move forward throughout the MSBA process. And these are just kind of, like I said, baselines to see where we're at. So for example, you can see that the green could be a good option to have at that site location. Yellow would be manageable, and then gray would not really apply. Good thing is we don't really have any red on here, so we don't see any no-goes right now. But again, these are just hypothetical situations.
And we know that we have to do a standalone Roselle McDonald option
Yeah.
because of the way MSBA approved the project.
That brings us into our more hypothetical situation that we put together for logistics. So we took the Howard School and we mapped out a potential new build on the athletic fields adjacent to it. We're taking into consideration that those athletic fields and all the sports that would happen there would have to be relocated. Also existing utilities, there's a leaching field, so we can't build there. There's also close abutters that we have to be in constant communication with at this location. We just try to piece it together to see where a potential build could land on this site. And one main thing that we have to point out is we want to keep access around the existing school, so we know that's very important. We have to have constant communication with the school that's going on at the time of construction. We do have a lot of experience building next to active school sites, so this is something that we have. And on the next slide, this is just an example. You can see a new building, Carver, is within 40 feet of the existing active school. So we want to keep minimal disruption to learning, and we want to keep in constant communication with the staff of the school and the district at all times. Speaking of communication, we have multiple different types of communication that PMA likes to be a part of. So we have some, newer digital communication that we do, such as a project website for the project to get information out there about it with some FAQs. Social media accounts we'll find often using a Facebook page or Twitter. And then we've used YouTube in the past too for video updates or even Facebook Live for walkthroughs. I know during COVID we did a few Facebook Live updates. I think Wareham did one. I think we have a slide on that we'll look at. But we still also do the old school, which is the paper flyers, the community events, educational programming meetings. We'll attend all those and be an advocate and get the word out about the project. These are just some examples of our team at various events. So open houses, parent-teacher nights, sports games, parade, any sort of community event that we'll be able to attend and answer any questions that anybody would have during the whole process. Some examples of flyers that we did for the town of Easton, informational flyers that we have with some FAQs and some next steps on the project. Here you see a Twitter feed and also including an estimated tax impact. This gets a lot of hit and a lot of use. We find it very beneficial to the community to have this. An example of a project website. So we have multiple projects now where we've built websites in-house and we can manage that process so we can get information out there such as schedules or any information, meeting minutes or past presentations. We can upload that and use this as a good source to the community. So these are the two video examples. The one on the left is a YouTube video. Our marketing team went on site and interviewed the superintendent, and this was for a project that actually won a CMMA award, so that's what this was used for. And then on the right, you'll see a Facebook Live with some interactions there. We had a lot of comments on this. That was actually a big hit, the Facebook Live. If people couldn't get there to tour the building, but you could walk them through virtual, it helped out. PMA in general, we're site managers, right? We're construction managers, but we work out of a trailer that's on site. We're not in the office a lot, so we're boots on the ground. So that means we're looking at any QA/QC issues in the field. We're looking at any weather. We're looking at deliveries, and this all gets incorporated into our daily construction log that we keep on site. We look at workforce that the contractors have, certified payrolls, anything out of the ordinary that would happen. We're there, boots on ground, and we have not just one person. We have a staff that will be on site as well. Here's a sample of our project budget. So our budget aligns very closely with the MSBA cost code. So this has been, groomed over the years, and it aligns perfectly with the MSBA. So we find this ease of use on our end and also ease on use for the MSBA. When they need a copy of this, we can fire them off our budget, and it lines apples to apples with what they're looking for. We'll also track cash flow from the very beginning of the project to the very end. So you'll see here we have projections, actual district costs, third-party funding, and then there's a tiny red bar over here, and this is actual monthly costs that will populate as the project goes on. So we can see where we're tracking, making sure we're falling in line with our monthly cash flows. And that's the end of our presentation that we had. Did I miss anything?
No, perfect. So thank you very much. We're just very excited to be part of the team. I mean, it's a very local team from PMA. We're all in the area, so very familiar with your community. And look forward to working with each of you for many years.
Yeah, like Chad said, our team is local. I'm based out of Kingston. Chad's in Rochester. Chris Urbano's in Raynham. Sean's in Milton. But we're all local. We're all on the South Shore all the time. So once this becomes home base, we'll be here and here for the community.
Any questions from any of the members? Scott?
The Easton project that you were referencing,
Is that the new middle school they built?
Elementary.
Elementary, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
elementary.
On the
school.
same campus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
The Blanchard School.
Yep, okay.
Other questions? You did a great job. There's no questions. How about that?
Thank you.
All right. Well, if there are no questions, then as I indicated, is to take a motion. Got to tweak it a little bit from what I sent to you, just to reflect the contract price and the fact that we're still under town council review. But again, that shouldn't be an issue. So the motion I'd like to entertain is that the school building committee recommends to the MSBA OPM selection panel the hiring of PMA for OPM services during the feasibility study phase for the Roselle McDonald School project for a contract price not to exceed $320,000 and subject to council review.
Second.
Is there any discussion on that motion? Any questions? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? So voted. All right, well, subject to the OPM panel review, congratulations. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
And so the next step is for Mark and I to do a submittal package to the MSBA that they have to provide to the review panel. That's due on April 10th.
Correct.
So Mark and I will get together with that. We'll fine tune the contract. The contract, we do not sign the contract until after that OPM review panel session is completed on May 6th. So Mark and I will be attending that meeting. I'm sure we'll get questions about our selection process. That's all part of the documentation that we're submitting. But they're going to ask us to respond to questions that they may have about how we went through that process. And obviously we'll be prepared to do that. That's all we have at this point. I mean, that's a pretty big step for us. I know it feels like we're still at somewhat of a snail's pace, but, and I have to tell you that, and I'll look into Chad and Mitch to see if I'm accurate about this, but we can expect us now a similar process with the architect selection process. And, you know, my guess is, I haven't checked the exact dates of when their panel meets, but we're probably talking about sometime in August, would be my guess of roughly when that selection will take place, somewhere in the summer, I think. So we've got to do the same thing. We've got to do another request for services. We've got to do another review of respondents, shortlists, candidate interviews, reference checks, and make another selection, bring it to you people and to the committee, and then go to the MSBA as well. The difference, though, this time is we've got help. We won't be alone at the table for the selection process. We'll be get guidance because it's critical. There are certain things that need to come from the architect, and we just need the benefit of PMA's expertise in trying to focus on those things that we need to be looking for as part of the designer selection. That perhaps can be quite different than what we looked at for this project here, and we just need to be guided accordingly. Any questions on that? All right, Mark and I didn't talk about this in advance. My feeling is that there's no point in us having an April meeting because we won't have gotten past the MSBA OPM selection panel session by that time. So I'm planning at this point, we'll cancel the April meeting and we'll plan to hold the regularly scheduled meeting in May, the fourth Tuesday in May. Yes. Mhm. Yeah. And it's possible that the selection subcommittee members may need to meet after May 6th, but before that meeting to kind of get going on the process for the designer selection once we're past the OPM selection, but that'll be tentative at this point. Any other business that needs to be brought in front of the committee? Any questions for anybody? Mitch?
One quick.
Sorry, Chad.
No worries. So May 6th is OPM review panel?
Yes.
Generally, right after OPM review panel, we send the designer RFS draft, so the MSBA can start their review, because their review varies 2 weeks. Does that need to be approved by the full committee, or is there a subcommittee that can?
The subcommittee, I mean, we presented it to the full committee at a regular meeting, but the subcommittee managed that with the
OPM.
With the
So it'll be
OPM.
similar with the designer.
Yeah, so we would do the same thing.
May 6th, we'll be good to go with the draft for the MSBA.
Okay, so that would be one reason why we would probably get the selection subcommittee back together
Yeah.
before the full meeting and at the end of May for the full committee. Okay, thanks, Chad.
So, Gary, so your intent is to keep the same selection subcommittee that we had for the OPM
That would-
in line for the designer?
It would be my intent unless
Okay.
somebody who participated in the selection subcommittee, I mean, it's not a forced position. If any of the selection subcommittee members do not want to participate on this time around, happy to look to another volunteer. But I'm just going by past practice of what we did the last time around, and it worked because, once you've been through those steps and what has to be done, I'm not saying it's any easier going through it with the architect, but you've been through it once already. But if any of the members who served on selection subcommittee, again, do not want to participate with the designer selection, just let me know and we'll make that change. All right, seeing nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, thanks again.
Easiest vote of the night.
I'm sorry, it was lost.
No, that's-